Welcome in, everybody. Michigan State Spartans live here on the Voice of College Football Network. Let me just turn some extra lighting on. I'm your host, Brian Elke, host of Michigan State Spartans Live. Follow me on Twitter or on X, Ryan EL_key. You just saw that on the bottom line there. Follow me on TikTok as well. Postgame walks, Elke, EHLKE. Be posting once the season starts. Be posting just quick recaps on TikTok right after the game. And then once I get home from those home games, we'll be doing a live show. We'll dive fully into the game every Saturday. Well, some Friday. Well, technically will be Saturday by the time we get home from those Friday games. Is the two Friday games, 8:00 starts on the schedule. Of course, the first one, Toledo, just 22 days away. And then Oregon be 3 months, November 20th. So we're almost there. We are just about 3 weeks away from Spartan football. And we have a couple things to talk about today. As today was Michigan State Camp Day on Big Ten Network. They had Dave Revson, Howard Griffith, Jake Butt go and visit East Lansing, observe practice, do some interviews, and we'll dive into what they said and kind of their observations, and then we'll dive into the bigger question because as we saw on social media, I think early this week, big voice in Detroit sports media, a Michigan State alum, so then Michigan State doesn't have culture, a game day culture. And so we'll kind of dive into those comments and if I agree with that and, if things do need to change up in East Lansing on game day. And, if you disagree, jump into the comments of what you like about Michigan State's game day culture and what you'd love to see changed, if anything, or what you just want to see changed about the game day environment, just in general. Because I think that is a question worth diving into for us Spartan fans is how can we make East Lansing the best game day experience? So we'll dive into that later. First, we're going to talk about what the Big Ten Network had to say today about Michigan State as they're going through all their training camps and, just interviewing all the coaches, all the players, talking about what they see. And, today they made the rounds of kind of the same old. You got to see Jordan Hall, you got to see Alessio, got to see Cam Edwards finally. Just he got his time to shine. He got to talk. Got to see Kenny Soares Jr. also, Joe Rossi, Pat Fitzgerald. They interviewed all of them on Big Ten Network today. If you didn't watch it, it aired at 6 p.m. Eastern. So if you have it recorded, if you're watching Lions, preseason game right now, you're watching us and don't want to, jump right into that. It was a fun hour. Hearing Jordan Hall kind of speak to now that they're in practice, it was kind of nice to hear Jordan Hall speak on the differences of from last year to this year. And a lot of it wasn't surprising what he said, but it's just nice to kind of hear him say it, of just the constant energy that's around the building with Bulla, with Rossi, with Fitzgerald. And that's something that's not surprising to any of us. We knew what Jonathan Smith was, and we're not here to drag him down any further, but it's just, Jordan Hall is the one guy we're going to listen to when it takes, when he kind of speaks on that. And speaking of Jordan Hall, we're going to dive off of Michigan State for a second. Jordan Hall does wear the number 5. The big news in college football today, Jaden Daniels, who we're familiar with, saw him when he was at Arizona State. I think, was it the 2 years? Both years that we played them was his 2 years at Arizona State. But he sent a cease and desist to LSU today about not using him in future marketing, opportunities, not using his picture around campus, asked for his replica Heisman back. And a lot of it stemmed from them handing out the number 5 to a sophomore who was a freshman All-American last year. Who this sophomore, a cornerback, he was promised the number from Brian Kelly and then didn't wear it last year. And then Lane Kiffin's like, well, hey, surprisingly, Lane Kiffin's like, we're going to honor that promise. Here you go. And Jaden Daniels got all miffed and said, don't use me in any future stuff. And it's just an odd take because, especially with college football, you can't necessarily retire numbers. You can honor numbers. But to retire a number in college football is just almost impossible. Because you have, I don't know how many players you can have on a roster at one point, but you have people doubling up numbers all the time. If you start retiring every single player, it's ridiculous. I know Michael Irvin, as crazy as he is, kind of said it best about, the possibility of his number being retired as a Cowboy. He goes, no, I don't want that. I don't want my number retired. He goes, I want people to wear my number because someone wears 88, they drop a pass. They're gonna be like, oh, Michael would have never done that. And now CD Lamb wears, he goes, but if CD Lamb makes a great play, and they're just like, yeah, that's just how Michael did it too. He goes, I get the best of both worlds when people wear my number. So it's just ridiculous. And with Jaden Daniels, it all kind of stems from his mom. His mom seems to be, from all the reports, a very controlling aspect of his life. And so to tie it back to Jordan Hall, it's nice to kind of have, the complete opposite of that with Mama Hall and the impact she has on Spartan Twitter. The fact that we're not dealing with this type of situation. So the fact that we don't have to deal with former players coming out like, I can't believe they gave someone my number. It is what it's college football. There's 100 kids on that team. Like, those numbers have to be worn. So, but it's nice to have Jordan Hall just represent the green and white throughout. And then, got to hear from, Alessio, Nick Sheridan, Nick Sheridan, kind of the catch-all of it is kind of what Alessio said at Big Ten Media Days. It's a quarterback-friendly offense, and to kind of hear Howard Griffith talk about it after the fact of like, it's the offense is set up in a nice place for Alessio to kind of make those read progressions and just it's very quarterback-friendly. And to Nick Sheridan also have that same type of energy that Pat Fitzgerald does. Sheridan, we know, the former U of M quarterback, his dad, coached here, was it 98 to 02 under Saban, Bill Sheridan. So he's got the roots here. And the one thing that I think a lot of the things Big Ten said is stuff we've kind of hammered on this show was just the intensity that we've seen so far in 4 days and why it's a good thing. It's not just being loud to be loud. It's, with a purpose. And it, from what Revson, Butt, and Griffith said is that like the buy-in is there right now for the Michigan State players. And that's what's important when you're trying to create this energy for this team, is that the players are buying in. And that's the great part about it. And when they got to the end of the show, they were describing like, well, what's the biggest concerns for Michigan State? Like, we've talked all these nice things, but let's be real. They haven't been great the last 4 years. And before we dive into concerns, one thing they also did dive into, like I think it was Revson's first question was about the offensive line, something we've hammered home on this show about Pat Fitzgerald's like first plan of attack and how connected at least this offensive line looks, despite being, quite a few transfers on the line. And another interesting note from camp was Jacob Kotsnikov Michigan State on SI, I think reported a couple days ago that Connor Moore was getting some looks at left guard as well. He was starting right tackle last year, played some left tackle, but possibly getting a look at guard. And that Rakeem Johnson has looked really good so far the last few days. Today's first full day of pads, so a lot of that will change. So we kind of have to keep our ear to the ground on what the offensive line is going to look like here in the next couple of weeks. As you get Connor Moore and Big Ben there on the left side, like, holy shnikes. If Rakeem Johnson can step up, play some tackle, like, hey, this is all great. So that was nice to hear that some of the points that we've hammered home on this show kind of being reiterated by the Big Ten Network people. And when it got to the concerns of this team, a lot of it, again, things we've touched on as well. Like, their main concern was like, hey, the starting 22, good on paper. Like, they look good in practice. The biggest concern for this team is going to be the depth, which is very, very fair. Like, there's only so much you can grab out of the transfer portal. And so to hear, like, hey, the guys that we're highlighting seem to be in a good spot. Like, despite there's no returning wide receiver production, they seem to be okay there. The tight ends look great. Offensive line looks better. Defensive line, it could be an issue. Like, but again, nothing new here. If you've been watching us the last few weeks, that's a big concern. Also, the depth. Like, the depth at defensive line, the depth in the secondary, outside of Chuck Brantley and Trey Ball with your corners, it's like, okay, who else? So depth being a big concern is not surprising to hear on that show tonight, because it's something that, diving into this roster as camp has opened up is what I think we're all concerned about is, can this group stay healthy? Can we get these rotational players in to make an impact? With offensive line, if we're going to trust Pat Fitzgerald, sounds like we have some depth there. Running back seems like solid position. Tight end, great. Wide receiver, big question mark. Returning production, there's Krishan McCray and, Bullard a little bit. But we still need to figure out Bullard's eligibility status. So there's a lot of questions there. And same with the just defense all around, is that do we have enough depth to sustain this season? Because that's been a big sticking point. Jake Butt pointed it out kind of too. A couple of years ago, spring game, like, Michigan State's offensive line had 8 bodies, not 8 people they think could start. They had 8 people. So it seems like the offensive line depth's there, but on the defensive side, we don't necessarily know what the depth will look like. But we'll find out. 22 days away. So we'll move on to the next thing I wanted to talk about today. Is if you live in, I guess you don't have to live in the Metro Detroit area anymore, because, the ticket has expanded throughout the state. But if you listen to the afternoon show, the name Mike Valeni. He's their afternoon host. He's, perhaps the voice of Detroit sports radio. They were talking college football, I believe it was early this week. And, he's a Michigan State alum. He also is kind of soured on college football the last few years, understandably so, not just Michigan State, but just as a sport as a whole, of kind of the grave they've dug for themselves as a sport. But, he went all in and said, Michigan State, they don't have a culture. There is no game day culture at Michigan State. This is a man, like, I'm going to trust his opinion. Hey, like, we know he loves to crap on MSU. Like, it's, it's one of his bits. It's, I mean, if it's a bit, it's just how he feels. But he's also a man that's traveled around and been to quite a few college football games. Something I think we all aspire to do is travel to those different atmospheres and see something new as well. You know, you'll be going to Notre Dame this year, so we'll have a report on what that culture is like. But for the Michigan State game day culture, like I can't help but agree with him a little bit. Like everything's fine, everything's nice, but could things be better? Yeah. Like it also hurts when you do change coaches and that kind of identity gets lost of going into the game. Of to go from thunderstruck to swag surfing to chopping wood to the woodshed to back to thunderstruck to kind of create that electric atmosphere. And as for the game day culture, like I think tailgating is great up there, but is there anything special from the tailgating aspect? Because we know at Michigan State, humongous, beautiful campus. It's kind of the one things I do like about the tailgating is the different looks of tailgating you can get. I tailgate near used to be right out front of like the student union, moved back a little bit towards the old horticulture building. But you just love to be around people. And there's different pockets of good tailgating, but you kind of have to find that spot. Even if you go down the road, Michigan, like they have the golf course, which is an electric tailgate to walk around the golf course going around. Going to Ohio State, been there. That's been fun. Michigan State's is fine, but like, yeah, you have the drum line traveling around a bit. You have Sparty flying through on his golf cart. You have the Spartan walk, but it just seems like once you get towards the stadium, things should be, picked up a little bit. And maybe that's just how the design of Spartan Stadium is. And we know things are changing there as they are working on, that one side of the building that was just an alleyway. They tore down that old building, opened it up, but we need more there. So we'll see what these, if these renovations go through and what can happen with more of that stadium atmosphere as we're walking into the game. But what also helps with game day culture is, our fans staying for the entire game, our student section staying for the entire game. But also, that gets put back on the team. They need to provide us kind of a reason. Like the last 4 years, there's been a lot of good reasons to stay for that second half. So I understand that of some students taking off, but still, we got to create the culture. When we're moving games away down to Ford Field, what does that say about our game day culture, especially when it's senior night? Moving a marquee game should be a marquee game on our schedule every single year, and we're taking that away from campus. Like, that's got to stop. Like, it's on us fans to kind of create a better atmosphere. Like, I think it's a fine atmosphere for college football because of how beautiful the campus is and the different pockets of tailgating you can kind of find walking around. But I think things could be a little better. We'll see what the Munn tailgate is this year, see if that gets some juice, kind of create around the stadium. But Shaw Lane can be, fun walking that way. But we got to create a better atmosphere for Michigan State. And hopefully Pat Fitzgerald, like the buy-in we're getting, hopefully with this energy from camp, we'll get more people coming up to these games, to making Michigan State, a must-have ticket. And with the Big Ten as well, like we're gonna get marquee games every year, no matter what. Like we don't have to worry about even this year. It's an off schedule, but we're getting Oregon in. Right, Oregon is the only team from the college football playoff that we have on our schedule. but we are getting Washington in, which is still to me like, hey, that's a big deal. Them coming here still, like, and the saga of the ex quarterbacks. Like, there's reason to get up to East Lansing this year, especially since the saga of the ex quarterbacks are all home games. So I think it's on us fans to try to create that better atmosphere, that better culture of the game day experience. Now, great, it kind of has to be laid out for us as well. Like it goes, and we have to work hand in hand together with what's provided for us. But I dream of making an SEC tour one day of those stadiums and going to those tailgates. I think South Carolina that has the was it the train gating where you can rent out the trains, the cabooses, tailgating those. We saw Texas A&M. I know we talked about it on this show. Texas A&M and like the tailgating condos. Like the tailgating condos, like that would be electric if those were right near the stadium. Like to kind of start pushing people closer to the stadium to tailgate. Like there were some fun moments over the last few years. I can't remember which game it was last year. It might have been the homecoming game, where walking around and over by the baseball fields, it was just packed, and saw, Brian Lewerke tailgating over there. And when you get those former players on campus, like them, like one year, just tailgating, like this was just 2-3 years ago. Calhoun, walking through the tailgating area, taking pictures. And maybe that's something that will come back this year. Maybe those former players popping up as we saw with the Spartan Dog Con that happened. And the pictures from last year to this year, it looked like it doubled in size. So maybe Pat Fitzgerald, is bringing the juice for the alums to get back on campus with Max Bola back here, like having that former player connection on the staff to bring those people back to campus, to make people want to tailgate, to say like, to hopefully bump into those former players. So for, Valenti's sentiment of Michigan State doesn't have that game day culture, I'm going to sit on the fence a little. I think we do, but I think it could be a hell of a lot better, to be perfectly honest. I think it'd just be a hell of a lot better. So if you're just joining us, Michigan State Spartans Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Ryan Elke. We're live every Tuesday and Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, and live on Facebook on the Voice of College Football Network Facebook page. Once the season starts, we will be doing post-game shows, home games. We're going to have to wait a minute as I travel back down from East Lansing back to my house to bring you those post-game shows. Away games, probably as soon as post-game media is done, I'll jump on here. We'll do a live show. We can have some fun. That way too, we know what the coaches and players said. I think I'll just be at Notre Dame as the only away game I plan on attending. So for the other games, be hopping right on. So we've talked a lot today about, what the Big Ten Network had to say is today was their day at Michigan State. And, Pat Fitzgerald spoke, Joe Rossi, Nick Sheridan, Jordan Hall, Kenny Soares Jr. A note on him, he did not practice today. His first day at pads, but I guess he had oral surgery this week. Don't know the extent of it. Didn't look anything bad. My guess is probably like a wisdom teeth situation where you just need, a couple days off and you're fine. You'll be okay. So that's my assumption that, the reason he was out. The assumption is wisdom teeth. The explanation given was oral surgery. That was said on the Big Ten Network show. And, we dove into Mike Valenti's comments about Michigan State's culture, and not the culture of the football program, but like the game day culture at Michigan State up in East Lansing. And, Valenti dived in and said, Michigan State doesn't have any. And I'm going to push back just a little. Say it could be a lot better. Like, I think it's fine. Like, I think because there are nice tailgating pockets you can go to, it creates a fun atmosphere tailgating. But I also think like we could amp it up a little, especially as we get closer into the stadium. I'd love to see things, bigger and better there at Michigan State. And I don't think anyone could jump on here and say that it's perfect. I think we want more. Like, I did like the additions last year during the game of, adding the fireworks. It sounds dumb, but it's fun. Having the drone show happen during one of the games. It sounds stupid to talk about these things, but it's fun when it happens. And even the in-game stuff, Michigan State could get a lot better. Instead of flashing pictures of the H-man on there, like, let's roll back some highlights. Let's find a song other than, like, I love Thunderstruck. We can keep that as the intro song, but let's find some new ways to get this crowd involved. That isn't bar trivia. That isn't the helmet cam, the Lion Cub cam, the Kiss cam. Like, college football is kind of like minor league baseball, where you can be really unique with it and have fun with it and try things. To me personally, like, I think, like, we have Zeke, like, he's great for 2 TV timeouts is what I think he's used for. We could do more. And of course, we all love the field goal. Was it the fly to field goal, the Air Lansing bit that gave us the electric clip of the one student who slipped and fell? But, like, let's create a much more fun atmosphere. But that fun atmosphere will come with wins. This team starts winning, more people get interested, more ruckus in the stadium. And hopefully, too, with these stadium renovations that will come, like, it creates, a better atmosphere around Spartan Stadium when you're walking in, to where you're in more of an awe of what happens walking up to that stadium. That's what I want to see in the next few years in East Lansing, is kind of create a bigger and better atmosphere going up tailgating every single week. Because, as we all, tailgating's the best thing we do here in America. For Michigan State, it could be a lot better. Maybe that's on me. Maybe I need to step up my tailgate spot, create something more memorable. I got a pizza oven. We used to tailgate next to a guy that would sling pizzas out. Maybe I need to become the pizza guy. I'll call Freddie the pizza man. I'll call him up, have him give me some lessons, and maybe I'll step up the tailgating a little bit this year, have some more fun. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, share it with all your Spartan friends and families that, they can jump on this show and jump into the comments and, hey, we'll talk it out. We'll have some fun. We are just 3 weeks away from Spartan football. And I know, the first 2 weeks we probably won't have opponents guests as their MAC opponents with Toledo and Eastern. But I know the week of Notre Dame, we will have the people from Notre Dame Fighting Irish live on the Voice of College Football Network. We'll do a crossover show. So that will be a lot of fun. Talk about getting that rivalry back and probably crap on the school down south of us. So that'll be a lot of fun. So I thank you all for watching. We'll be live, excuse me, Tuesday is our next show. Tuesday, 9 p.m. We're live every Tuesday and Thursdays, 9 p.m. right here on YouTube on Michigan State, the VOCFB. Make sure you click subscribe. We're live on the Voice of College Football Network Facebook page. And we'll be back Tuesday, 9 p.m. as we inch closer to Spartan football beginning. Go Green.